You don't know just how horrifying corporate wars are in the cyberpunk universe. Many of the soldiers who fight them are no longer even human. They're corporate-built nightmares like Atom Smasher, 96% machine, 4% organic, and 0 humanity. But the Dark Future's battlefield doesn't end with him. Chemical weapons, ACPAs, orbital strikes, space combat, aquatic mammal spec ops, clone wars, even the net itself has become a war zone. And all of it, every atrocity, every innovation, and every massacre culminates in each corporate war. So today, I will be covering just what warfare truly looks like in Mike Pondsmith's cyberpunk universe, using source material that spans from the late 80s all the way to the release of Phantom Liberty, all of which is canon. You'll learn just how terrifying war is in the dark future. This video will be split into 2 segments: the lore of corporate wars and what composes them, mercenaries, weaponry, equipment, and such, much of which you've likely never heard of. If you end up enjoying the video, remember to leave a like and hit the subscribe button for more. Your support is greatly appreciated. Without any further delay, let's begin. In the waning years of the 20th century, the United States was already dying. The economy had collapsed, the environment was decaying, and the American people no longer trusted the men and women running their country. In that void of power, the 4 most powerful federal agencies, the CIA, NSA, FBI, and DEA, joined forces under a single banner. They were called the Gang of Four. What started as a covert alliance to preserve national stability quickly spiraled into corruption and conquest. Motivated by greed and backed by corporate clients, the gang sought to expand America's influence across South and Central America, not for ideology, but for resources. They toppled governments, assassinated leaders, and unleashed engineered plagues on foreign soil. Bioagents wiped out South America's coca fields and Asia's poppy plantations. Operations disguised as drug intervention, but really designed to destroy local economies and open the door for pharmaceutical megacorps to flood the global market with synthetic substitutes. The drug wars that followed turned the Western Hemisphere into a battlefield. South American nations retaliated with guerrilla attacks and terrorist strikes across US soil, culminating in a detonation of a suitcase nuke in New York's financial district, killing over 15,000 people. At this time, members of the cabal began investing money raised from covert black market US arms sales, not only to support the rebel groups under their control, but also to enrich themselves. By the mid-1990s, America had collapsed under its own corruption. The stock market crash of '94 triggered when Interpol exposed US agencies for global stock manipulation and money laundering, destroying the last illusion of stability. Within 2 years, unemployment and homelessness exploded. Riots burned across every major city. Nomad packs formed on highways. State militias clashed with federal troops. Fed up with the government's inability to solve the crisis, citizens lynched hundreds of criminal defense attorneys. Military units were deployed on the streets to keep the peace. When President James Richard Allen was assassinated on August 17, 1996, Vice President Harold Hunt, a Gang of Four ally, assumed power and ordered the military to crush uprisings by any means necessary, and declared martial law. The status of martial law introduced a shoot-on-sight curfew in many major cities, such as New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, and led to the Houston incident, where more than 2,000 citizens were slaughtered by artillery bombardments executed by the military, under the orders of the Gang of Four. As the conflict deepened, major states like New York and Texas began refusing to pay federal taxes, sparking economic blockades and open defiance of Washington. Tensions exploded when Gang of Four controlled paramilitary forces seized San Francisco, prompting a street battle with locals and National Guard. When federal troops tried to capture Sacramento, California declared independence, officially seceding from the Union. The U.S. military, unwilling to support the corrupt federal regime, refused orders to intervene, allowing other states to follow suit and form the Free States. By 2003, the Gang of Four was desperate. Their answer was one last war, the Second Central American War, a bloody campaign meant to rally public support and reassert U.S. dominance. It failed, catastrophically. Thousands of soldiers died, and the truth came out when journalist Tesla Johannesson of WNS leaked NSA transcripts exposing the gang's crimes to the world. What followed was chaos. Armed mobs stormed the Capitol, military units mutinied, the Gang of Four fled, hunted by the same people they'd sworn to protect. President Hunt was cornered in the Florida swamps and burned alive by a cheering mob. The old government was dead. With the fall of the Gang of Four came the death of the nation state and the rise of mega corporations. The military, stripped of leadership and funding, turned to private contracts. Reconstruction fell not to politicians, but to corporations. It was now a world where corporations had enough power to be left unchecked. And not long after the crumbling of the Gang of Four, first corporate war began. In 2003, Euro Business Machines, or EBM, attempted a leverage buyout of the failing Transworld Airlines. It should have been a simple acquisition, a routine maneuver, but the deal fell apart when Transworld's executives rejected EBM's offer, and another contender entered the negotiations, Orbital Air. Control of TWA's air traffic facilities meant control of the last reliable infrastructure for global transport and cargo movement. The situation quickly escalated in a panicked rush to secure control. EBM immediately hired mercenaries and terrorists to kidnap Orbital Air's negotiation team en route to a meeting. A covert operation meant to cripple their rivals' leadership before the deal could close, but the attempt failed. And worse, it was traced back to EBM. Orbital Air planned out a swift retaliation, bringing Zeta Tech into the fold, one of the most advanced technology firms of the era, to wage a net-based counterattack. Zeta Tech's Netrunners launched a massive digital assault on EBM's databases and infrastructure, hoping to bankrupt and expose them, but EBM was prepared. Their ice defenses shattered Zeta Tech's offensive, driving them out of the conflict entirely. With diplomacy dead, the war went physical. Both sides unleashed waves of cyber attacks, corporate solos, proxy militias, and covert operations across the third world. Piracy surged, airliners were shot down under unclear circumstances, hundreds of millions of Eurodollars were lost, and thousands of innocent lives along with them. But two key battles defined the war. The first came when Orbital Air Commandos stormed and captured an EBM orbital station, a daring operation conducted in defiance of every national treaty, still barely holding the world together. The European Space Agency condemned both corporations, demanding an end to the fighting in low Earth orbit. They were ignored. The second major battle ended it all. Orbital Air's elite teams launched a strike on the EBM CEO's fortified compound, breaching his defenses and forcing his surrender. With their leadership humiliated and their stock in freefall, EBM yielded. The first corporate war was over, but the damage had already been done. The world had just witnessed for the first time two corporations waging full-scale war, as governments watched in silence. The public barely understood what had happened, and for corporations of the dark future, one truth became undeniable: wholesale military strike warfare was a viable business practice. By 2008, the world was addicted to a new kind of fuel, Chew-2, an alcohol-based biofuel that powered everything from cars to cargo haulers. It was cheap, efficient, and most importantly, profitable. The second corporate war began with a partnership, or at least the illusion of one. Petrochem, the primary global supplier of Chew-2, offered to share its technology with Sav Oil, a massive Russian oil conglomerate still clinging to fossil fuels. The deal seemed mutually beneficial. Sav Oil would gain access to advanced drilling equipment and chemical refinement methods, while Petrochem would secure partial rights to the Siberian oil fields, some of the last untapped reserves on Earth. But before the papers were to be signed, Sav Oil betrayed them. Their engineers unveiled a new in-house drilling system that made Petrochem's offer obsolete. The deal was cancelled, and the two corporations experienced a rift. Both corporations had shifted their focus to the South China Sea, a region rich in undersea oil deposits and strategically vital shipping routes. Rival rigs, fleets, and outposts began sprouting across the water. But tension was palpable. Everyone knew a spark was coming. That second corporate war started on an otherwise quiet morning in early 2008. The Sabina Bravo, a petrochem offshore platform, erupted in a ball of flame visible for miles. Hundreds of workers were vaporized in seconds. And before they could even settle, Petrochem aimed the blame at Savoil, accusing them of planning demolition charges. Savoil denied it, but the accusations didn't matter. Within days, divers under Petrochem's payroll retaliated, planting explosives on a Savoil platform and sinking it to the ocean floor. Both megacorps began to mobilize their private navies. Submarines, carrier drones, and mercenary strike teams prowled the Pacific. Oil refineries and drilling platforms became battlegrounds. The seas burned black with crude, and the coastlines of Asia glistened with chemical fire. The first phase of the war was short and brutal. Both sides lost over 75% of their production capacity within weeks. Entire fleets went dark. Thousands of workers were lost to sabotage, drone strikes, and environmental collapse. Still, Savoil pushed ahead, in large thanks to state support and ruthless efficiency. Their early victories carved a path across the South China Sea, but Petrochem struck back with precision, using leased Malaysian aircraft to assassinate Savoil's CEO and founder. For a moment, it looked like the balance might shift in Petrochem's favor. It didn't. By late 2009, Petrochem's naval forces were decimated. Savoil regrouped, rallied, and began to systematically eliminate Petrochem's remaining platforms. Their submarines and drone fleets turned the Pacific into a graveyard. By October, Savoil had seized de facto control of the South China Sea, its oil fields, and the global fuel market. But victory came with a cruel twist. The Sabina Bravo explosion that started the war had been an accident. Savoil hadn't planted the bomb. Thousands had died, millions of euro dollars had been burned, and the Pacific had been poisoned, all because of a malfunction. In the aftermath, both corporations were dragged before international courts. The world's governments condemned them. They fought with armies, assassinations, overthrew governments, and targeted orbital strikes. Savoil particularly ignored the demands of the nation-states and did as it pleased, later only being forced to pay some reparations to a few states. After all, the world still needed fuel. Fought almost entirely on the net, the Third Corporate War marked a turning point in how megacorporations waged war. It was no longer about soldiers and sabotage, it was about data, deception, and control of the digital world. The conflict began in early 2006 when examiners from the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce uncovered a financial confidence scheme involving investment counselors at MANF. Using the Rothstein Fund, a subsidiary of the Bank of New York City, these counselors manipulated private investors for personal gain. When the chamber reported their findings to the district attorney's office, the Rothstein Fund, furious at being implicated, chose to cooperate. They turned over all of their records to investigators, and in a move that would ignite the war, hired local netrunners to dig into MANF's data fortresses in search of further proof. MANF saw this as an act of aggression. Within hours, they fortified their systems and unleashed teams of corporate netrunners to retaliate. The attacks targeted Rothstein's financial assets before escalating into direct digital assaults meant to cripple their entire infrastructure. For several days, chaos consumed the net. Data fortresses transformed into armed camps. AIs waged proxy wars, and the digital underworld watched as two titans tore each other apart. But it was time that NetWatch intervened, restricting net access and launching a crackdown on unauthorized data warfare. Their sweeps resulted in dozens of arrests and numerous flatlined runners, bodies found slumped over their terminals, brains fried by black ice. But the war soon shifted out of the digital world. Both MANF and Rothstein began taking the fight into the physical world. In a single 12-hour span, mercenary teams clashed across low Earth orbit and on the ground, targeting communication hubs, data centers, and satellite uplinks. The battles were short, brutal, and costly, resulting in millions of dollars in damage and countless casualties. What followed were 6 long months of constant net assaults, endless raids, counterattacks, and data breaches that ultimately achieved little. Indeed, More damage had been done during that one day of physical combat than in the entire remainder of the conflict. When the smoke cleared, the Rothstein Fund was gone, erased from both the net and the corporate registry. MANF survived, but only barely. The two executives responsible for the scheme were handed over to the district attorney, and MANF was forced to pay restitution for the destruction in orbit and on Earth. By 2016, these corporate conflicts had become routine. People were shocked this happened, only that it lasted so long. Yet its method of warfare was unprecedented. For the first time, the battlefield existed almost entirely in cyberspace. Analysts heralded it as a dawn of a new era of digital conflict, where wars could be fought without militaries. But everyone would learn soon enough, solos never go out of style. The Fourth Corporate War began with a familiar story, a dying company and two vultures circling overhead. When the underwater tech megacorp IHAG went bankrupt in early 2021, two rival aquacorps, Sino and OTEC, both sought to seize its valuable assets. The conflict opened with typical corporate battle. Stock manipulation, sabotage, economic warfare, but both sides were evenly matched. And soon, finance turned into firepower. Behind the scenes, Eurobank quietly fueled the conflict, hoping to drive both corps into ruin and claim IHAG's holdings for itself, cementing Europe's control over global oceanic trade. But the plan spiraled out of control once Sino and OTEC began hiring outside help. OTEC secured the might of Militech, America's premier private military contractor. In response, Sino called on Arasaka, Japan's most powerful corporate security empire. At first, neither Arasaka nor Militech were looking for a direct war with one another. Their respective contracts were simply an avenue to generate massive profit and promote their services to the rest of the world. This, however, quickly shifted when an Arasaka advisor working with the Sino strike team was targeted and killed by Militech security, as she wasn't wearing her corporate uniform identifying her as a non-combatant. In retaliation, a Militech-owned vessel was targeted by automated Arasaka torpedo systems. By February 2022, governments began seizing properties of OTEC, IHAG, and Sino to force them to the negotiation table. The conflict between the Ocean Corps was settled, but the same could no longer be said for Militech and Arasaka. The war had become personal. While battles between Sino and OTEC ended, a shadow war between the two security corps continued. Arasaka took this opportunity to test the newly completed Soulkiller 2.5 by planting it in the vehicular SmartLink processor of a Militech executive. This opened a 3-month period of covert strikes, bringing in legends like Blackhand, Cunningham, Bartmoss, and countless more. By May 2022, the shadow war had gone hot. Military strikes were a daily occurrence across space, Earth, and the net, all while the net was slowly being corrupted by the unleashed data crash after Arasaka had successfully assassinated Bartmoss. Governments across the world began seizing Militech and Arasaka assets to end the war, with Japan nationalizing Arasaka and the United States nationalizing Militech. All that was left was the conflict in Night City. Cut off from Japan, Kei Arasaka entrenched himself in Arasaka Tower. Across the city, Militech, operating under covert orders from President Elizabeth Kress, prepared a final strike to wipe Arasaka off the map. On August 20th, 2023, a small nuclear device detonated within the tower. The blast killed over 500,000 people, turning the corporate district into a radioactive ruin. Publicly, the United States blamed Arasaka, claiming the company had triggered the bomb as a last resort. By 2025, the war was officially over. Arasaka was forced to retreat to Japan, stripped of its global power, while Militech became the de facto military arm of the United States. The Fourth Corporate War had torn the world apart. Cities across the world lay in ruins. Hong Kong, Busan, Rio, LA, Chicago. The battles between corporate militaries reduced entire districts to rubble. Space itself wasn't spared. Orbital platforms, satellites, and even habitats were caught in crossfire. The fighting spilled in a low Earth orbit, and killsat strikes left wreckage that rained down across the globe. While the sourcebooks don't provide any solid casualty statistics for each war, we do have much clearer numbers for the Arasaka HQ disaster. Cyberpunk Red states that the explosion instantly incinerated over 12,000 people in the vicinity of the towers, and fatally injured upwards of 500,000 more, with another 250,000 dying in the resulting aftermath over the following weeks and months, meaning that over 750,000 people died as a result of this singular event. Factor in a city like Busan, home to 4 million people, being hit by a bioplague that has kept it in quarantine till even 2077, it can definitely be inferred that the Fourth Corporate War alone is responsible for over 10 million deaths spanning the world and space, all while a general estimate of every other corporate war combined would be in the million range, showing just how deadly the Fourth Corporate was. But the following economic and environmental consequences created an apocalyptic and deadly era in the aftermath. Supply chains collapsed. Currencies lost meaning. What global trade remained was strangled by rogue self-replicating sea mines left over from Arasaka's naval AI systems, automated weapons that continued attacking any vessel they detected, long after the war had ended. With the seas impassable, the skies dangerous, and the city shattered, humanity entered an era known only as the Time of Red. It was a world defined by dust, ruin, and survival, a red haze of radioactive storms and bleeding horizons that marked the end of the old world. So, corps like Arasaka and Militech could rely on their very own forces to fight in conflicts, unlike others who entirely relied on mercenary work. So just what were these corporate soldiers like? Well, they came from all walks of life. Some were ex-special forces, others ex-edgerunners, assassins, etc. They are trained and contracted to maintain complete loyalty, but they weren't treated valuably. Most were hooked up to and heavily dosed with feel-good endorphin triggers. These drugs are capable of deadening or nullifying pain messages to the brain, as well as producing euphoria in the subject. The endorphin trigger is a time-tested but little-known piece of cyberware. It's a little more than a booster for normal brain signals to produce the drug. A human on endorphins can virtually ignore fantastic amounts of pain and suffering, continuing to act as if uninjured, allowing their soldiers to be sapped for every bit of value. These soldiers could be armed with some of the most dangerous and destructive weapons of their era: grenade rifles, railguns, electrothermal snipers, stealth armor, plasma and photon cannons, you name it, allowing them to have a fighting chance against the various threats they'd face during corporate warfare. But we also have Firestorm Shockwave stat blocks to give us a better idea. Militech combat soldiers typically installed a neural processor with plugs and smart gun link, and a biomonitor at the bare minimum. Equipped with combat armor and a helmet with low light IR, anti-dazzle, targeting scope, amplified hearing, and a radio, they had in hand a Mark IV assault rifle with an underbarrel mini grenade launcher, an Avenger pistol, and a knife or bayonet. Though depending on any specializations, they could be equipped with much more. Remember your time in 2077. Many will randomly have cybernetic limbs, exoskeletons, etc. No two corporate soldiers were going to be exactly the same. The same could be said for Arasaka, just with changes in who manufactures their equipment. Both corps were also releasing bioplagues and chemical attacks during the Fourth Corporate, so I imagine that required additional equipment for soldiers. Though Arasaka did have Spec Ops ninjas. Saburo sponsored Hereditary Ninja, and their training from birth makes them dangerous agents, and they are, however, rare, only to be called upon when necessary. They even utilize swords created in orbit, the crystalline matrices aligned to make a sword that's stronger and sharper than any terrestrial metal. So like previously said, these mega corporations maintain their own security divisions, but they rarely deployed them in early conflicts. Instead, they relied on mercenaries, solos, and freelancers, all deniable assets. By the time of the First and Second Corporate Wars, this practice had become standard. Nomad clans were paid to run convoys and smuggle equipment through blockades, and fixers manage recruitment pipelines. It was only once the war went hot that Militech or Arasaka used their militaries and corporate assets to their fullest extent. Corps hired everything from ex-military soldiers and street solos to entire PMCs, using them as disposable tools in proxy conflicts. When EBM and Orbital Air clashed in the First War, both sides employed commandos and independent operators to seize orbital stations, assassinate executives, and sabotage infrastructure. This process is best understood through the analysis of the Fourth Corporate. Militech worked with infamous Netrunners such as Alt Cunningham, Spider Murphy, and Rache Bartmoss, capable of waging war across the net entirely on their own, and even employed Night City legend and top solo Morgan Blackhand to oversee security operations and their Spec Ops unit. As I further explain the dangers of corporate warfare, I need you to keep in mind how little this guy had installed. Here's his stat block on screen. But this guy has a neural processor, Sandivistan boost, smart gun and vehicle links, interface plugs, a chipware socket, nasal filters, 2 cyber optics, a cyber arm, muscle and bone lace, and nanosurgeons. Now that may seem like a lot at a glance, but compare him to any other Spec Ops unit or full Borg and he is pathetically underpowered. So how does he make it as the top solo? Well, he's sort of like Batman in that sense. Yes, he has some of the best weapons and funding at his disposal, such as the Malorian Arms Assault Cannon, but it's his intelligence that keeps him alive. So, soldiers aren't entirely reliant on cyberware and handheld weaponry to get them through battle. More often than not, they could easily be outclassed by Borgs, heavy weapons, and of course, vehicles. But there's a myriad of equipment to give them a physical advantage, and first of its kind was the linear frame, a metal framework with synthetic muscles for movement. Now, these early exoskeletons were rarely used for anything important. Clumsy and hard to control, hapless operators often tossed half-ton cargo crates through walls and ripped loading doors off hinges. It wasn't until the advanced biofeedback systems of the 2000s that the more practical linear frame could be developed. And especially by 2045, they had been improved to the point of being Borgware. While these exosuits had their time and place for military or combat application, they were greatly overshadowed by a more combat-focused invention, the Assisted Combat Personnel Armor, otherwise known as ACPAs or Powered Armor. Refers to a combat environment suit that has been reinforced with composite armor and assists the wearer in carrying its own weight as well as additional equipment and weaponry, using a more powerful advanced linear frame commonly referred to as a chassis. So you can think of ACPAs as an armored linear frame, allowing it to be further modified than just a bare exoskeleton could be. These suits were essentially mini-mechs, increasing the survivability and strength of the user, powered by a battery unit capable of lasting 24 hours, considered watertight down to 30 meters, and having a filter/rebreather system that allows for 1 hour of sealed operation both in water and dry land. As time went on, progressions were naturally made. ACPAs increased in size. Some had standalone weapons, some mounted, and some both. More common suits like the Arasaka Standard B and Zetatech Grasshopper were modest and fit like a glove, while others such as the Militech Commando or Russian Arms Bombardier were much bulkier and didn't fit to normal human proportions. During the Fourth Corporate, they had become monstrous, enabling the user to pack weaponry capable of dealing with infantry, armored targets, and tanks, in a package not quite as big as 2 men. The sensor and computer processing arrays in the suit take in the entire environment, combine it with known combat facts, and synthesize all the info into a single heads-up display, sometimes even a virtual reality one. But there's an inherent flaw in ACPAs. It's a soldier wearing armor. There will always be a delay and inconsistency between the user and how the suit functions. It's an extension of oneself, but not a part of them. This is where a full body conversion has the advantage. In the majority of full body conversions, the spine, brain, and adrenal system are transplanted into a fluid-filled support sac within a fully cybernetic body, in which nutrients are infused. Meanwhile, the actual metal body frame is powered by a rechargeable battery with a multi-day charge. Their synthetic musculature delivers superhuman speed and strength, and most chassis come standard with full environmental sealing, resistance to heat, cold, pressure, and radiation. A board can wade through chemical sludge, march across a nuclear wasteland, or dive hundreds of meters underwater without so much as a glitch. Atric Robotics' burrow conversion could operate under the extreme conditions and atmosphere of Mars. Militech's Spider redefined stealth, allowing the user to anchor and blend in anywhere. Raven's Wiseman could even provide the user an edge in cyberspace. Anything you can do, a conversion can do better. Even non-combat boards could become terrors of war. Industrial-grade conversions, the kind built for heavy lifting or deep-sea construction, were routinely retrofitted for battle. Massive mechanical frames meant to move cargo or mine ore became unstoppable frontline engines of destruction, capable of tearing through armor plating and concrete with their bare hands. Atom Smasher himself is the perfect embodiment of this philosophy. His body isn't some precision-built military chassis. It began as a novel tech Samsung conversion, designed for construction, loading, and hazmat duty. But the craziest feat of engineering merges the benefits of an ACPA and a full-body conversion, the Dai-Oni, an ACPA manufactured by Arasaka during the 2020s, only capable of being piloted by a full board. A blend of armor and servos devoted to relentless destruction. The conversion was directly wired into the Dai-Oni suit, converting its myriad sensor scans into direct neural input. The once human inhabiting the biopod became the suit when fitted with the alpha body, combining cyberware with the suit's impressive strength and maneuverability. By 2022, Arasaka's technicians had only produced a handful of these Dai-Oni, as they were a deep corporate secret whose testing had been very hesitant, since it only took one of these machines to go haywire and completely destroy the laboratory and kill all the individuals tasked with manufacturing it. Not to mention the near assured risk of cyberpsychosis, meaning someone like Atom Smasher was the only one capable of using the Dai-Oni, which he did in his final battle with Morgan Blackhand at the end of the fourth corporate. So why not just outfit entire platoons with conversions? Think about how hopeless it was when David Martinez faced convoys of Militech soldiers and vehicles. They stood no chance against his shiny new experimental chrome. I mean, what started the Dai-Oni project in the first place was a single IEC Dragoon conversion that destroyed an entire Arasaka installation off the coast of China. These are individuals worth entire units in combat. Well, not everyone is capable of handling the stress associated with trading out your humanity for metal, alongside the already crushing weight of being a combatant. PTSD and reckless cyberware installation is a one-way ticket to cyberpsychosis, just like what we saw with David Martinez, Maine, James Morris, and many, many more. Despite the technological advancements and terrifying equipment in physical warfare, the net remains one of the most horrifying war zones in the cyberpunk universe. One must realize that the vast majority of the cyberpunk population doesn't truly use the full potential of the net. Sure, they uplink through their vid screens, VR visors, or temple trodes, but they don't immerse themselves like true net junkies. The reason being potentially fatal or crippling consequences of a black ice virus turning your brain to mush. But it isn't just death itself a netrunner needs to be afraid of, it's the process of said death. When a netrunner dives, their consciousness projects an icon, a digital avatar that acts as their body and weapon in cyberspace. Icons can be as simple as a flat 2D monochrome shape to a complex photorealistic human form. Everything in the net is represented with icons, data fortresses, other netrunners, individual programs, whatever. Taking a second to think about the possibilities of the net essentially being a VR experience, you can start to see just how terrifying this could be. There are countless hostile and dangerous programs that could appear as anything. Cerberus, a hellish two-headed dog capable of tearing you limb by limb, the zombie anti-personnel capable of wiping out the victim's forebrain, making him into a drooling vegetable, vampire and werewolf programs, and many, many more. That's not mentioning rogue AI that will devour every bit of the data your brain composes. But there's still programs like the Succubus series by Bartmoss that aren't so bad to look at. It actually looks like Spider-Murphy's icon, a red-headed anime girl in tight clothing, but it still fries your brain. During the early Fourth Corporate, warfare went underwater, so naturally, there had to be improvements in combat capabilities to handle the harsh environment. While old cyberware is designed to fend off the occasional thunderstorm, most implants and enhancements aren't 100% sealed, and this means that vast sectors of biochips, biomers, and other sensitive components could be exposed to the corrosive effects of saltwater. There's no easy solution to this problem. Traditional waterproofing occurs with fashioned seppuku of bulbous sockets at the joints, on top of which is heaped with the pain of regular maintenance. The only other option is to have it all ripped out and buy wet wired wares, engineered with enough polyceramics, organic contacts, and new tech to run you 300% of the original cost, but it is completely submersible down to 200 meters with no adverse effects. And what exactly is new tech? Well, these are innovations such as sinus reconstructions and neo-lungs that make diving less dangerous and easier to do. To bypass all of this, there still exists advanced scuba gear, the standard rebreathers, oxygen scrubbers, and oxy extractor systems, all the way to the power armor we previously discussed, such as the 2021 Gorgon Heavy construction suit. Typically, these are only equipped with hydrojets and tools, but as the need arose, corporations began to retrofit them with armaments for combat. Now, most ocean combat is still conducted by battle subs, attacking vital undersea targets such as research domes, mining colonies, and farms. But there's an interesting field of naval research you likely don't know about. Even before the collapse, the Navy was experimenting with aquatic mammals for use in special operations, so it was only natural for the corpos to pick up where the government studies left off. By cybernetically enhancing dolphins, whales, and their kin, and providing them with supplemental neural preprocessors to make them smarter, aquatic mammals can perform basic recon and picket duties, seek and search, and human assistance. Unfortunately, even with the additional neuro-boosting implants, dolphins and other aquatic mammals can't hope to compete with the falling cost of cyberware and the proliferation of remote-operated vehicles and autonomous specialty bots. Since 2015, when OTEC published a study proving the cost and effectiveness of keeping dolphins versus outfitting and training new employees, corps have slowly been pulling back on their aquatic mammal budgets. Despite the shrinking dividends, dolphins, orcas, and whales are still used for patrol in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Caribbean theaters. Meanwhile, sharks have been used extensively as area denial weapons in the Caribbean and Atlantic. There's even stats for all three in Stormfront. But this shouldn't be confused with the Cyberform killer whale, a submarine designed to emulate the movement modes of aquatic creatures, a lifelike appearance, and synthetic skin, capable of both ramming and biting targets. Yeah, the early war was a little weird. As Sino and Otech faded into obscurity, Arasaka and Militech remained, and with this, the hot war began shortly after the data crash. Battles sparked all over the globe. In a moment's notice, any location could turn into a war zone. Arasaka combat cyberwalkers capable of traversing rough terrains, mobile command vehicles, and no shortage of drones. But no number of ACPAs and ground vehicles would matter if they couldn't be utilized around the globe. Cue the Dayton Overlord airship, used to dominate entire battle zones with ECM and jamming. They, however, do not operate anywhere near the front lines. They are kept as far away as operationally possible. These airships are capable of carrying 50 tons of cargo. Similarly, the Aero Zep is commissioned as a massive cargo-carrying blimp. Along these airships, Corps utilize orbital infrastructure for intercontinental drops and global logistics, submersible and surface supercarriers such as the Arasaka Kujira, heavy lift VTOLs and aerodynes, and finally, the continental maglev and rail networks. Even the data crash has largely changed the trajectory of Netrunners during the Fourth Corporate. As the war gets hotter and the net more chaotic, net combat isn't nearly as common as it once was. This is because everything important has been moved offline or to local networks to enhance security, meaning that Netrunners now had to get inventive. The Fourth Corporate introduced full-fledged combat Netrunners. More accurately, they were really just covert technicians, required to go to places to get into systems not physically connected to the net. This means that they have to be physically fit and skilled in evasion, self-defense, and electrical knowledge. A huge leap for all the net nerds. This means that these netrunners were typically much less technically capable than those who lived entirely on the net, but they were the only ones able to do the job without a full escort team. Orbital artillery, also known as artillery, ranges from small crowbar penetrators to multi-ton rocks fired by the ESA mass driver. The availability of artillery makes many of the attacks of the Hot War possible. Conventional artillery is bulky and can take time to set up and fire. It's also vulnerable to counter battery fire, either from local artillery or airstrikes. An artillery unit, however, is almost immune to counter battery, can be arranged long beforehand, and can be accurately aimed even into the middle of a city. Its kinetic energy and attack speed virtually ensure the destruction of its target, and make engagement with any sort of active countermeasures difficult. The downside, of course, is that it takes time to arrive, usually around 5 minutes, and everyone knows you start using it after the first round. During the Hot War, it's also very vulnerable to sabotage and appropriation. As soon as a launcher reveals itself, it's only a matter of time before an orbital power destroys or commandeers it. It's nonetheless commonly used. Both sides spent years placing dozens of launchers in orbit and spent considerable effort to place systems designed to take command of launchers belonging to other corps and governments. A single artillery launcher allows an infantry commander to annihilate an entire tank battalion or destroy even the most heavily fortified facility. Artillery is too powerful of a weapon to be ignored. But honestly, I saved the best for last. If Arasaka's HQ had not been nuked at the end of the Fourth Corporate, you may have very well been seeing clone armies in future conflicts. You heard that right. During the 2023 Arasaka HQ raid, two shocking discoveries were made. An engram and data file of Yorinobu Arasaka in the storage core of Soulkiller, but more disturbing was what's found in the adjacent room. It appears to be some sort of cloning facility with a neural uploading system hooked into the Soulkiller storage core, equipment that seemed to be used, with tissue samples labeled Alt 0217 2013 and Yorinobu 09/23/2022, as well as several others. You see, in 2020, Biotechnica scientists Francis Young and Moira Kelly managed to implant a construct personality into a perfectly cloned human body, using a combination of cybernetic and organic technology to hold the implant in the blank brain. The self-aware clone was named Adriana. She was the first fully functional, self-aware, self-viable human clone. Now, Adriana wasn't necessarily human, keep that in mind. She was a construct personality, so essentially a complex AI in human flesh. But what program comes to mind that could fix this issue? One that less imitates, but more copies. That's right, Soulkiller. Soulkiller and this cloning tech combined would produce a form of immortality. And of course, Arasaka wanted to get their hands on this tech, and the opportunity presented itself when a group of mercenaries were given the task of transporting Adriana across the entire United States to Francis Young, who had defected from Biotechnica. Arasaka used all of its available resources to intercept this group and cut a deal, allowing their netrunners to extract all needed information on the cloning technology in exchange for letting Adriana and the group go afterward. So yes, that cloning tech found in the Night City HQ is very real, and very much not their own R&D. But it wasn't going to be in their possession much longer. The ongoing data crash and soon-to-be nuclear explosion was about to make sure of that. So the nuke was set, a battle between Blackhand and Smasher ensued, and the rest of the team extracted as the explosion went off under the two solos. If Militech hadn't successfully destroyed Arasaka's Night City HQ, we very well would have been seeing entire units of Atom Smasher or Odas running around. But I haven't even told you the real truth behind all the corporate wars. See, Everyone thinks it was about money, power, or global domination, but that's just the cover story. When you look at every recorded battlefield, every bombing, every crater left behind since the war, you start to notice a pattern. From Rio to Night City, from the ruins of Chicago to the depths of the South China Sea. Every single one lines up perfectly, a pattern spanning continents, a circle. The corporations weren't fighting for control, they were drawing something. And if you trace these coordinates on a global map, it forms what can only be described as a transmutation circle. And that is everything I have to say about corporate warfare in this cyberpunk universe. I hope you all enjoyed and found this video helpful or entertaining. I really enjoyed putting together the unique intricacies and history connected to these corpo conflicts. The average person who's only played through 2077 surely hasn't heard the majority of this info without delving into YouTube or the source books. So please, let me know all your thoughts down below. A huge thanks to all the channel members up on screen. Without your ongoing support, YouTube just wouldn't be the same. Just knowing I've had chooms like you guys backing me for so long means a lot. Far more than I could ever describe. So seriously, thank you to every channel member, subscriber, viewer, and even hater. Make sure to have a great week, and I will see you later, chooms.